All right. The adoption journey.
The adoption journey. Okay.
The data that you should be tracking during the journey to make sure your adoption of RevOps is successful is the idea. You guys ready?
Born ready.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the RevOps podcast. I am your host, Jordan Henderson, and I am joined today again in this three-part mini-series by Howard Brown and Alastair Woolcock. Guys, go ahead and say hello.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Hello, everyone. Alastair Woolcock.
This week, we're continuing a three-part mini-series, which is like truly a mini-series of smaller episodes, quick hitters, and we're going to be talking about adopting RevOps. We're continuing that conversation to a degree, but it's an important thing to remember because we often talk about adoption, I think, like, hey, we've adopted a RevOps model. It's happened. It's done. We're doing it. It's over, right? Like that's the sort of like, we've implemented this tool. We've implemented this framework. It's done. We did it. Good job, everybody. High five. That's bullshit. It's total bullshit. You will have leadership changes. Adoption is an ongoing process. It needs to be intentional. And even if you're the head of RevOps at a company that's fully invested in the model, you need to have a fresh toolkit of things to track to make sure that you're actually progressing in your adoption of RevOps and actually moving forward and doing this the right way. And there are metrics and ways to track what that looks like to make sure you're doing this appropriately, right? And Alastair, you have a definition. Everybody can go back to the past episode to get it. It's sort of a 3-stage definition of RevOps, but it takes, probably a year to 2 years to get through those 3 stages. And so, you want to track that you're actually doing this appropriately. And so, if you guys think about the RevOps adoption journey, now I'm not talking about the RevOps journey, I'm talking about the adoption of RevOps, right? Because it's not a, hey, we're doing it, it's on thing. We're talking about a long process. There are obviously a lot of critical moments that hopefully result in more alignment along the way, right? It's not that we're not going to see any results from adopting RevOps for 2 years. There's got to be some things during the process that are going to lead to more alignment, greater efficiency, more revenue, all the above, right? Talking about the big moments or small ones, say it's like even identifying, for example, like lead pickup rate. We're increased that by 2% because we've adopted this model, and that increases our revenue by $100,000 year over year. Like even little things like that, right? What moments on that journey do you think companies need to make sure they get right to fast track their RevOps adoption? What are the key ones that you see as very important?
I think there are any number of key moments. I think the key is to have the right tracking of all of the changes that you're instrumenting, making sure that, to me, the whole RevOps model is really about making the changes in the process and measuring the effectiveness of the change in real time. So are the changes that we're making by stringing these pieces, processes, and data improving performance, whether, to your point, it's a 2% increase in response rate or a rep that's sending more emails that are getting opened, or it's a conversation that's eliciting better sentiment and better retention, or more reps hitting quota, or it's conversations that are generating more open-ended questions. The whole idea of this is to take the data and deliver better performance. So is my marketing team getting better return on their investment? Are my sales reps performing better based on every moment of their engagement with a customer? Is my success team better prepared and handling their customers better? Are my retention rates going up? If you are instrumenting, if you are building a RevOps model, and from top to bottom, you're not measuring what you're doing and the result of what you're doing, you're missing the mark. And I think we call that something other than RevOps. We call that what you used to do.
Strong opinion. Alastair, you got thoughts?
I do. So I agree with what Howard said there, but I'll break it down in my language here. I would say there's 3 things, right? You got to think 3 flows of evolution for the organization. The first is going to be what we see on the data side. So you got to think in terms of the interconnectedness of the data as you're moving, right? Step 1 is I'm just putting it in a data lake. Step 2 is what processes can I now interconnect and can I optimize? Step 3, we're going to the automation. Then ultimately, you're getting like predictive insights, and a bunch of other hyper personalization things that come out of that. So it's just that. Number 2 is going to be at the organizational level. Like, can I functionally grow and organize and evolve and metric the organizational development itself? Because remember, like we said in the last episode, the importance of aligning customer success, all of the sales functions and the marketing functions is really big. But, that's great for me to say that. You wander in a large enterprise or any company, small or large, and tell them, oh, yeah, we're going to just suddenly align this all.
Right.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, right? This is, if you've ever read the book on innovation called Who Moved My Cheese, like this is the classic headwind of everybody loves the idea until you sit down and tell them, oh, we're going to have one CRO that's going to own the thing end to end. We're not going to change reporting structures and everything. Like people's heads come unglued, right? So how do you get around that? You think then of the organizational flow and again, break it apart by task and function of where we're going, right? That's really important and critical. So you're going to start with basically, hey, I might add a CRO, then I add a RevOps person. That's a good basic metric, step 1. Number 2, I'm going to now really break it apart in terms of maybe it is SDR and CX alignment at both ends of the revenue spectrum. All right, they're aligned. And then you keep doing this all the way through to the end state where you say, I don't actually have that organizational structure at all. I've now built pods of people that are best-in-class expertise across every stage of the buyer journey and the tasks, and now those pods represent different product groups or geographical groups, et cetera. And that's on the most advanced end of that spectrum. And there's a lot of steps in between.
Yeah.
Step 3, I know this is a doozy, but step 3 is now getting into the process components itself. And I'll give you like tactical examples of things that I look for when people say, hey, I'm a RevOps style company. I'll go, okay, good. Do you have automated lead scoring? Okay, good. That's like a fairly simple thing. Most people do these days. Good. You should have that. By the way, do you have automated buyer segmentation? Ooh, now I may not have quite that. Okay, well, that's a good basic thing you do. Next, do you do automated routing based upon next best action to resources and how it's needed? Oh, okay. Well, that's a nice phase 2 evolution piece. Are you auto balancing your funnel? Routing hot leads and right things at the right moment at the right time. Are we doing it based upon availability? Are you then, like kind of the step 3 would be, of the process pieces, are we looking like sentiment analysis and your attributions to deal type and all of that kind of stuff? Are we pushing next best action based on a prescriptive, not a reactive approach? And then ultimately you want to get to like the hyper automated level where you're going to say, okay, and now attribution tracking, behavioral analysis in real time, real time insights, really auto identifying cross-sell activities and so forth. Off you go. So it's buckets of things, Jordan. It isn't so much this carte blanche metrics because Howard nailed it. This is what you should have been doing. I'm breaking it down into the functional steps that identify and show you actually are doing it.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, and each one of those things that you've highlighted is trackable, right? Like you can see whether we've done this right or done this incorrectly, which is perfect. What are they getting wrong? What are companies getting wrong when they implement this most frequently?
Well, I got to jump in. I mean, he's starting at, we got to start with a data lake. Then we got to give a bunch of people titles. And then we have to work on the rest of the org. And then we're going over here and combining all. Like my head is spinning. I feel like I Twilight Zone back to the Gartner Alastair from a year ago. So where we need to start is by implementing a tool that can get us going out the gate, right? That can bring that together and not have to build all of those components and restructure my entire org, because let's get a tool in that starts to provide both the insights and that engagement. And guess what works the best? You show the results, you get more investment, you get people to buy in. If I got to work ass backwards, it's going to be a 4-year journey. And that might be great for some companies. We don't have time for that. Sorry, Alastair. I had to go there.
Well, I think you very much, actually, I would say a really interesting point here. a lot of people want to try to tackle this all in-house. Why? Like, why would you do that? There is now enough platform-based technologies out there that hit enough of these pieces to leapfrog you ahead. Now, I'm not saying it's a slam dunk by any means. I'm not saying you may experience some technical debt, sure. But Howard, yeah, you absolutely. Think in terms of the points of revenue creation that are most directly involved between the seller and the buy side, and there are tools that absolutely hate that, right? You look at the conversational pieces that are out there today. We look at what's going on, the guided selling components that are out there today. You look at real-time input, behavioral analysis, and analytics tools. All of those things are ripe. They're available. They're there. You just got to put them in place.
Come on now. So wait. Stop right there. We're not at Gartner now. You've joined revenue.io. So all that stuff we have, right? Like there's a reason you joined this company, not to turn it into the commercial.
You have totally ignored me, but you've both answered the question despite ignoring me, which is, the question was, what are they getting wrong? And the answer you've both given is not doing it with technology and trying to roll up their sleeves and do this with human API. Right? That's the answer you've given, which is, I agree. I think that's the right answer. Both of you, very long-winded way of getting there, but totally agree. Like there are tools focused on doing this. And if you say, hey, we're going to do this all in-house, we're going to build our own, like we're going to do all of this, you're looking at like 5 years. It's over, right? Like you don't have the time to wait that long. So I do agree. I think that's the most important thing. And in the interest of quick hit episodes, I'm cutting you both off. We're moving on to this week on LinkedIn. So, this week on LinkedIn, I got a question from the head of RevOps at a SaaS company, about a 400-person company, by the way.
Okay.
The question is, and this one, I actually think this is a really fun question. My sales ops person, head of sales ops, the person under RevOps, right, rolling in, feels very frustrated. She's been pushed a lot lately to work on new and difficult projects, and while it's been awesome for her growth, I think she's experiencing some frustration as a result. What would you recommend I do as the head of RevOps, her manager, to help her?
Sorry, she's getting really exciting, interesting problems to solve, and
well, so I think this is an important thing, and there is a reality for ops folks, which is there's times when you adopt a model like this where an ops person might spend 3 months doing things they've never done before, which is awesome, but also comes with a degree of frustration, right? Like, I'm not great at these things. I'm doing something I'm not very good at over and over and over, and everything is something I'm not very good at. And after 90 days, 180 days, whatever.
I didn't realize this was turning into a counseling session for you, Jordan. Yes. Okay. So you worked for 90 days. You weren't very good at it. You got frustrated. You finally learned what attribution is. I get it.
I think it's true of all human beings, though. Like, I think you spend, like, it's great. Like, I everybody's been there, right? I'm learning a whole bunch of new stuff. It's awesome. I love it. God, I'd love to spend a week doing something I really know how to do. Just like that mental break, right? Just a little bit.
I'll jump in, Jordan. Now that Howard's done heckling you, so I would look at it this way, and for any manager, and this is just a good illustrative point, right? Think in terms of time and value in the projects that sales ops person is doing, right? They got some big things that take a lot amount of time but drive big value to the organization. They got to learn. They have all that stuff. It's big, heavy stuff. You need to balance that with the smaller projects that have a shorter time duration but have cumulative value. There may be half a dozen of those things. And then you got to figure out how to celebrate them. And I know that sounds flippant and trite, but too often people go, oh, here's the big thing. Here's the golden nugget. It's the top priority. And they get burned out. People are people. They need their victories week over week.
Right.
Week over week. Every 5 days, how are you celebrating movement on the big initiative? But you're celebrating the completion of the tactical things. Like it's almost like an agile approach, but think in terms of management, right? So the manager should have a weighting system that allows them to understand the value to the time impact, and then like work with that poor person on that side. Otherwise, they're going to get burned out. They're going to go somewhere if you don't.
Totally agree. I think that celebrating things, by the way, is the most important thing you can do in that scenario.
Yeah.
I think
And by the way, critique the misses.
Yeah.
Like that's the other side. People don't mind being critiqued. As long as you said, hey, I want this done by Friday, this date. Here's what has to happen. And if they miss the mark, dive into it, figure it out. Don't just, oh, it's okay. You're better next time. You're worried the person's going to go. No, like you got to be the critical person that helps solve it and get it back on track, but then you allow them to celebrate when they get there. Howard, you're like you're genius at the behavioral side of this, so I'll defer to you, but what do you think?
I thought actually your answer was brilliant. Whether it's a RevOps person or any other person within the organization, it's celebrating the small wins, recognizing the work, and making sure that people are working on things that they're interested in and excited by. So thinking about that RevOps person, everybody asked me, what am I looking for in a RevOps person? You're looking for somebody who is challenged and excited by new and interesting problems. They're always looking for new ways to add value. They're recognizing that they're a critical part of the growth of the organization, and they should be celebrated as such. But find the person that is curious and analytical and wants to solve problems. That's critically important.
Totally. Yeah. And I think the only thing I would add, and it maybe is a bit controversial, is managing ops folks, particularly in these scenarios. I've seen this happen with lots of ops folks. It's a thing where I'd actually recommend, hey, take a step back. What are you great at? Go do that for a day. I don't care if it doesn't align to the bigger arching picture. I don't care about any of these things. I want you to spend a day just really doing the thing you love and are great at, because it's going to give you a mental break. And when you come back tomorrow and have to do this whole new thing, you're going to be fresher. You're going to be more focused. You're going to feel better. You're going to have a better approach. You're going to do better work, right? Like ultimately that's what's best for the business is actually for you to take that mental vacation, which might be, hey, you're great at lead routing. Go rebuild the lead routing today. Like, I know we don't necessarily need it. It's probably not the biggest priority. It's the best thing for the business, because the way you'll come back tomorrow and the way you'll come back next week and the weeks that follow is fresher and better and clearer. And you're going to do better work as a result, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. It makes sense why, we gave you this podcast here, Jordan, because clearly you like to talk and feel like you're a master at it.
Makes me feel fresher every time I come back. I'm better the next day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will say this, and this might be an entire podcast unto itself, but what you're both saying there, it's all about allowing people to flourish and be successful in the thing you hired them for. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how many companies get this wrong, right? They tend to go, oh, I hired Susan for X. She did a great job, and now I'm going to push her into 3, 4, 5 other different things. Mm-hmm. Instead of going, how do I help them be amplified and be outstanding at what they do? And it goes against the culture of most companies. They always think about, push the envelope into something else. The classic being the sales rep that gets promoted to be a manager, right?
Right.
It doesn't. You think of anywhere else in the world, if we were running a baseball team right now, would we want to coach up our shortstop to be our back catcher?
Yeah. Or what?
Do you think your pitcher is suddenly
just catch
third baseman or you don't.
Just stick with the cricket examples, really. Just don't get into American baseball.
And what's the name of the principle? There's the principle essentially is that people in corporate America get promoted until they're at a job they're not very good at, and that's where they sit for the rest of their career. Because that's like I said, if you're great at something, you get promoted until you're at a job you're not that great at, and then that's where you spend the rest of your life.
Here's a great number for the audience to take away from here. When people are promoted vertically inside an organization, 90% of the time, they quit that company within 36 months. You think about that and the entire career progression structure that people put in place, and it's really simple, Jordan. It's a lie. It's a total lie. How can you actually be career pathing everybody up when every single company in this world is a pyramid structure, right? You can't have 1,000 chiefs at the top. So it goes through every division. So you're selling a lie the moment you go to that piece. So it's all about make the people the best they are.
Let's end on that happier note at the end of that very sad note, which is focus on doing what's best for your employees. That's where we'll leave it. Anyways, that's this. We got to cut this one short. If you enjoyed this episode, give us 5 stars wherever you listen to the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, all of the above. Send us your questions for this week on LinkedIn, and we will see everybody next week for the 3rd episode of our 3-part series with HB and Alastair Woolcock. Thank you, everybody, and see you next week. Thanks, guys.